everyone. So yesterday in the last video we discussed about what is hypothesis, what is the importance of formulating a hypothesis, and what are various types of hypothesis. While I was editing my video, I noticed that a section of my video was not recorded. Although I taught it, but it was not recorded. So this video caters to that section. There were few topics that were left in the yesterday's video, which I am re-recording it. So please listen to this video as well, because the things that I left yesterday were in types of hypothesis. There were two hypotheses more that we have to cover. First is the simple hypothesis and second is the complex hypothesis. Okay, so this topic we'll be doing in this video. Secondly, apart from this, what we'll be doing is the errors while formulating the null hypothesis. So we'll be looking up to the errors that a researcher tends to do while formulating the null hypothesis. So this video is all about simple and complex hypothesis, errors in null hypothesis, and also briefly I'll touch and revise on what is a null hypothesis and what is alternate hypothesis with an example, because I have explained it in detail in the last video. Okay, so let's start. So firstly, let's begin with simple hypothesis and complex hypothesis. Okay, after studying about null and alternate hypothesis, I would like to bring you all to simple and complex hypothesis. In all the books, in all the research material, we often start with the simple and complex hypothesis. We feel that these two are very important. But in my perspective, I feel that null and alternate hypothesis hold the most prominence in the entire research process and in all the types of hypothesis. Because null and alternate hypothesis actually guide us. They tell us about the entire research process. First, we look at the null hypothesis, we do the testing, we verify it, and then we either validate it or falsify it. And on that basis, if we falsify the null hypothesis, we come up to our alternate hypothesis, correct? So that holds the most important aspect of the research. But as we are learning about various types of hypothesis, so here we come on our simple hypothesis. What is the simple hypothesis? Simple hypothesis means when I have one independent variable, when I have one dependent variable. In my entire hypothesis, I have only one independent variable and only one dependent variable. This is the simple hypothesis. For example, smoking leads to cancer. Okay, smoking leads to cancer, or smoking leads to bad health, whatever. So here smoking becomes my independent variable. Cancer becomes my dependent variable. So in the entire hypothesis, I have one independent variable and one dependent variable. This is very simple and it is known as my simple hypothesis. Okay. When I come to my complex hypothesis, I say that there is more than one, which is two or more. Two or more independent variables, two or more dependent variables. For example, smoking and drinking leads to cancer and liver problems. Okay, so smoking and drinking will be my independent variables and cancer and liver problems will be my dependent variable. Other example that I can take? Yeah, yesterday we took an example, right, while discussing about hypothesis, that manure leads to growth in plant. Correct? We did it, no? manure leads to growth in plant. So this is my simple hypothesis wherein I have one independent variable and one dependent variable, correct? But now if I have to make this in a complex hypothesis, how I will write it? Manure, environmental conditions, the soil quality, the soil type leads to growth and increase in the quality of the fruits or the plant, whatever that is. So I add two or more independent variables, two or more dependent variables. That brings me to my complex hypothesis. Is it clear? It is very simple. One each, two or more. When I have variables which are more than one. That is your simple and complex hypothesis. Apart from simple and complex hypothesis, yesterday we did directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, statistical hypothesis, logical hypothesis, and our very main null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. So this completes a type of hypothesis topic. Okay, so now we come up to the another topic, which is errors while formulating a null hypothesis. This is very important that we all as researchers and students of research need to remember and understand. This is also very important for your examination point of view, whether it's UGC NET or you're writing any research oriented entrance examination or examination for your post graduation. So this is very important. Objective questions come 100% from these errors. So there are basically two types of errors while formulating the null hypothesis. There are two types of errors. Okay. Here I'll be explaining error 1. Here I'll be explaining error 2. Okay, type 1 and type 2. Okay, so error 1, what does error means? Error 1 says, this error says that when null is correct, when the null hypothesis is correct, but the researcher rejects it, then it is type 1 error. When null hypothesis is correct but researcher rejects it, what does it mean? When I say that my null is correct, it means that there was no difference. Am I correct? That there was no difference. The relationship between IV and DV was completely equal, right? And there is no scope for any alternate hypothesis. Why? Because our first hypothesis, which is our null hypothesis, is validated. It is correct. It is validated. But as a researcher, what I do? I reject it. I say no, I am not validating this hypothesis. I reject this. And what I do? After rejecting my null hypothesis, I create my alternate hypothesis. Then this type of error is known as error 1, type 1 error. Okay, it is also known as false positive error. तो false positive error कौन सा error हुआ? Type 1 error of null hypothesis हुआ, wherein the null is correct, it is validated, but the researcher rejects it. Am I clear? It is also known as false positive error. Correct? Now, what is the cause of this type of error? The cause of error 1 is the researcher's bias. Okay, the researcher's bias leads to error 1. The bias of the researcher leads to error 1. Is it clear? All these points are clear? You can note this. Just read it once and tell me if this is clear to you, there's any scope of doubt or anything that you have not understood. Okay, now we come to our error 2. Error 2 is one of the most, how do we call it? A sin. Error 2 is a sin in research. I'll tell you after explaining what is error 2. Okay, once we say error 1 can be ignored, okay, because the research is being continued. You are rejecting the null hypothesis, creating an alternate hypothesis, and you are checking the variations. You are manipulating your independent variable. You are checking different possibilities. So okay, if we disregard it, we are still doing a research. We are doing further research, but doing error 2 is a sin for a researcher. Why? Let's understand. Okay, here I write when null hypothesis is wrong. When null hypothesis is wrong. First you tell me, when will the null hypothesis be wrong? Null hypothesis will be wrong, ma'am, when there is a difference between the independent variable and dependent variables relationship. It means, ma'am, that if I manipulate my independent variable, there is a significant change in my dependent variable. Either my dependent variable is increasing or decreasing. It is not equal. Then I reject my null hypothesis. In this condition, when I reject my null hypothesis, what I have to do? Ma'am, you have to create an alternate hypothesis and carry out the research. Correct? What does error 2 say? Error 2 says when null is rejected but researcher accepts it. So when null is rejected, we understood what null is rejected means, correct? But the researcher accepts it. It means that in reality, there is a significant change. There is a significant difference in the relationship of IV and DV. But the researcher says that no, there is no difference. I accept my null hypothesis that there is no difference. Okay. Result of this. What is the result of this? If you see, it is a violation of research ethics. Do you understand? It is a violation of research ethics because after committing error 2, my research is not objective. It is manipulative. Correct? No, it is not correct. The accuracy is not there. The parameter of validity that we studied is not followed because my null hypothesis is wrong. There is a difference, but I am saying that there is no difference. There is no scope of research. Correct? My assumption was correct. So it means that ethics are being questioned because null was wrong, but the researcher accepted it. Okay, this brings us to our error 2, which is also called, give me 1 second. This error is also called, यहाँ पे हमने क्या बोला? False positive बोला. This error is called false negative error. What is false negative error, ma'am? False negative error is the second type of error when our null hypothesis is wrong in reality, but the researcher accepts it. Okay? This is also called false negative error. It is a sin because it attacks the ethical standards of research. What is the cause? Think of it. What is the cause of error 2? If I am doing a research, if my null hypothesis is wrong, I will there can be a possibility of personal bias or the researcher's bias, but do you think is that the only parameter for which the researcher will accept the incorrect hypothesis? There has to be something else also, correct? So when I'm talking about the cause of error 2, I'll say error 2 majorly happens when the participant is rare. rare participant, rare population. What does this mean? That my subject topic is very rare. The people that I want to interview, the people that I want to take my survey on, correct, they are very rare. I'm not able to find the population only. So what I do, I accept my null hypothesis because I'm not able to function in my research. I'm not able to collect data. Participant is rare. This is the cause for type 2 hypothesis error. Okay, you can note this down. Okay, so now we did types of errors also in null hypothesis. Now I'll be taking an example to revise the null and alternate hypothesis that we did. So what I'll be doing is I'll be writing a research problem. Firstly, we'll identify the independent and dependent variables. Then we'll create a null and alternate hypothesis. So this is like a practice for you all also, and it will be a quick revision for us to understand how to formulate a hypothesis. Okay. So let's see the research problem. Let me form a problem. Okay, so basically, recently I gave my PhD interview, okay, for a reputed university, and I could not qualify for that because apparently my research topic was not about human interest, which is cool enough. Every university has their own, parameters that how they want to lead the students. So my research topic was the role of artificial intelligence in the senior secondary education. Okay, what is the impact of artificial intelligence in the curriculum? Because if you see NEP, the latest revision that happened in the policy was that they are adding artificial intelligence in class 5th, 9th, and even further studies for students. So I wanted to study the impact of artificial intelligence in government schools as well and private as well, and present a comparative study about both the functioning of the entire policy and their impact on students, teachers individually, and their relationship, the student-teacher relationship that we study. So that was my PhD topic that I wanted to pursue, and I'll still pursue that only because I feel that is a budding topic. So yeah, so now coming back to the topic, research problem. So let's take my problem only. Let's formulate a hypothesis for my research proposal. Correct. Now problem is okay, that my research aims to study the impact of artificial intelligence on student-teacher relationship in senior secondary education in India. Okay. Okay. This is the research problem. So firstly, I want you all to take 30 seconds and identify all the variables. We did a class on types of variables, right? I want you to identify all the variables that are present in this statement. Done? Okay. So now, let's identify the independent variable first. What will be the independent variable? Independent variable will be usage of artificial intelligence. Correct? AI will be our independent variable. And student-teacher relationship will become our dependent variable. Why so? Because the relationship between the teacher and student depends on the usage of artificial intelligence. Correct? That's why this is the dependent variable, this is the independent variable. And the entire research process will all be about studying this relationship between the dependent variable and independent variable. Correct? That's what research is all about. Yes or no? This is why we formulate our, firstly we identify our variables, then we formulate our hypothesis to test the relationship between the variables. Is it clear? And now we'll be, writing our hypothesis. Take 30 seconds and firstly write the null hypothesis here, and then we'll be writing the alternate hypothesis here. Okay. What will be the null hypothesis? What will be the null hypothesis? Firstly, the keyword for null hypothesis is no difference. This is the keyword. Second keyword, equal. Correct? And also one more keyword, no prediction. Okay. These three are the keywords for null hypothesis. Now, while creating the null hypothesis, how we'll write? That there is no significant difference or change in student-teacher relationship by using AI to facilitate education in senior secondary schooling. There is no significant difference or change in student-teacher relationship by using AI to facilitate education in senior secondary schooling. Correct? No significant difference means, इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? That our independent variable, correct, and dependent variable, both are equal. There is no change happening by manipulating the independent variable. Correct? Alternate hypothesis. When we reject this, we say we are rejecting if there is a change. Let's write alternate hypothesis. What are the keywords? There is a difference. Not equal. Less or more. Increase or decrease. Correct? There is a difference, less or more, not equal, increase or decrease. What will be our alternate hypothesis? Student-teacher relationship significantly improved by using AI in education. This can be our hypothesis, alternate hypothesis, that it improved. Means when independent variable was manipulated, my dependent variable increased, rise. Correct? There is a change. Now, let's create one more alternate hypothesis. What will be the hypothesis now? Let's show that there is no improvement. There is a decrease. Okay. So how can we show it? We can write like involvement of AI causes communication gap, correct, between student and teacher. Correct? So अब इसमें हम क्या देख रहे हैं? That when I manipulated my independent variable, there was a gap between the student, my dependent variable. Correct? So my dependent the relationship has become negative. The independent variable is negatively impacting my dependent variable. Correct? So this is the another possibility of alternate hypothesis, wherein I am saying that the change is not positive, change is negative. Correct? This is how we write a null and alternate hypothesis. So this is one more case study that we did right now to understand the concept of null and alternate hypothesis in depth. If there's any more doubt, you can type or write it in the comment section. Otherwise, that's all. Be clear about what is hypothesis, be clear about different types of hypothesis, what is null, what is alternate. Without null, alternate cannot come into existence, and the two types of errors that happen while formulating the null hypothesis. That's all. That's all about hypothesis and all the fundamentals associated with it. Thank you.